Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming along. I'm James Elias. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at AVADO. We are a company that creates amazing learning experiences that help people and businesses get the professional qualifications, the digital skills training they need to be really successful in today's workplace. Before I joined AVADO, I worked at Google for 9 years, a bit more on that later. I was their marketing director in the UK and Ireland. And I started out in work back in '99, makes me feel very old, when the world looked a bit like this. So Google looked like that. It was in beta, amazingly enough, and that was my first phone. A Motorola StarTAC. I did amazing things like make phone calls and send texts with it, and to be honest, that was all it did. And so I guess how the world has changed, and in many ways that is the theme of today's talk. I'm going to talk a bit about the nature of some of that change. I'm going to spend a few minutes on what I think that means for businesses and many of us here. And then hopefully we'll end with a few suggestions about what we can all do next to make the most of these fabulous opportunities that digital creates. And I'll try and leave some time for some Q&A as well, so get thinking about what your questions might be. First up, who knows who this character is? If I'm honest, I'd be a bit surprised if you did. I think he looks a little bit like Larry King, but actually he's an ex-colleague of mine at Google called Ray Kurzweil, who I briefly met once. He's a bit of a weird character. He thinks he's going to live forever. He takes about 150 pills of various types a day. But he's probably most famous for being a kind of proponent of a theory called the Singularity. He believes that in 2029, he's very specific, artificial intelligence will be equal or greater than human intelligence. Now, most people think that's a little bit bullish. It probably won't happen in 12 years' time, but the truth is most people think it will happen at some point. And I think there's a broader point behind what Ray Kurzweil talks about, which is the nature of technological change. It's exponential. And we think in a very linear way. So as he says, if you take 30 linear steps, you take 30 steps. If you take 30 exponential steps, you take 1 billion steps. And so I guess we're kind of spectacularly ill-equipped to get our heads around the world of tomorrow, let alone 5 or 10 or 15 years from now. So if you're not, I suspect you already are, but if you're not a teensy bit sort of healthily paranoid about what the future is going to bring, then probably now's the time to start thinking about some of these changes more seriously. And what are those changes? So you'll have heard of it, talked about lots, but data, big data is a huge one. So every 3 years we are doubling the amount of data that we're capturing, and that trend is accelerating. This is a wonderful picture of a Google data center. The costs of doing this are coming down dramatically, and so data is being used to revolutionize pretty much all the businesses we're in, from marketing to the kind of experiences we have when we shop, to healthcare, to customer experience. In fact, the way that we manage talent and people in our organizations too. It's being fueled by another trend, which is artificial intelligence or machine learning. This is the ancient Chinese game of Go. It's, I think, 5,000 years old. It has more moves in it than there are atoms in the universe. I can't get my head around that either. So it's extraordinarily complicated as a game. It's one with 100 noughts after it, times more complicated than chess. A year ago, a company called DeepMind, that is a British company bought by Google, built a program called AlphaGo to take on the world's leading Go player. And AlphaGo beat that player 4-1. Now, this is pretty extraordinary because this was deemed to be the kind of holy grail of artificial intelligence gaming, something that wouldn't happen for 10, 15 years. And it happened within 12 months, and it's already happened. And the key here is that to do this, you need to have the ability to kind of be creative. Artificial intelligence needs to be intuitive or creative. It can't just use kind of brute force to win these challenges. Artificial intelligence now being applied to all of that data across many, many businesses with real impact. Then we have the Internet of Things. You'll have heard of this talked about too. I'll be honest, these are a set of fictional products from a wonderful site called the Internet of Useless Things, well worth checking out. Some of them in not such good taste. My personal favourite, the Fit Spoon. It claims that the spoon monitors the speed at which everyone over the internet is eating through the cloud, and then holes open if you're eating too fast to slow down the rate at which you're eating. So joking aside, the Internet of Things means that by 2020 there will be something like 50 billion things, objects connected to the web, including of course you, all of you who are wearing devices like Fitbits that monitor your biometric data. Increasingly, we are all adding to that data. And then we have very rapid advances in, I guess, things that I would describe as the consumer experience. So whether that's wearables, the fact that, give or take, we all have access to ubiquitous internet-connected devices, virtual reality or augmented reality, which is growing rapidly, frictionless payment. All of this is transforming the way in which consumers, and by the way, all of the employees who work in the companies you work for are also consumers who have these same expectations. It's determining how. Can you hear me all right? I'm just seeing if you could. I'll move this way. Sorry. Okay. Mine out of the way. I'll tell you what. That'll get in the way of the screen. If I come over here, is that a bit better? Okay. Sorry. You're very polite. So an example of where all this comes together. Amazon Echo. Hopefully you're familiar with this. Electra. Do this. Do that. I don't know if you saw the story recently. A newsreader in the US read out, doing a product demo, Electra, buy me a doll's house. And that was picked up by hundreds of Amazon Echoes in households around the US. And the next day, Amazon turned up with a bunch of doll's houses and all those houses that no one had ordered. Anyway, it's all coming together because if you think about it, this is a radical new type of consumer experience. It's you talking to a device in your home, setting reminders, getting it to do the shopping, asking it questions, having it control the lighting and the heating in your house. Of course, it's driven massively by data, by its ability to connect to other devices in your house, by machine learning. And how long will it be before it does the shopping for you? It can talk to the fridge, it can figure out the products that you have in there. How long will it be before you just say, Alexa, sort out my utility bills? And it goes and sort of finds the right energy provider for you, which is a very scary thought if you're in that particular business. And so this is the world that we're living in. Cue the slide of a bunch of people doing a cheeky high five. So what does this all mean for us in this room? I think a few things. The first is the nature of technological change, of all this change, is disruption. Technologies tend to follow these S-shaped curves, and it's really important that you as a business understand where you are on that curve before the next technology, the sort of second curve here, comes along and disrupts you and gives your business better performance. I think one of the challenges here is that often new technologies, when they first arrive, don't perform particularly well. I mean, how many years did we have that were the year of the mobile before mobile really took off? You could argue much the same about virtual reality and wearables, but you'd ignore these trends at your peril because sooner or later they will become the next disruptive technology. And if you miss that opportunity and jump on that S-curve too late, you'll miss out. Here's an example. I'm sure you can't see all the detail of this. It doesn't matter too much. It's called the unbundling of a bank. So a few years back, a handful, 4, 5, 6 high street banks did all of our banking for us. They were the only places you could go. And I guess what this seeks to illustrate, and there are similar charts for other industries, is how very disruptive, very focused startups, normally with a bit of technology at their heart, are quickly disintermediating and disrupting the whole banking value chain. Hence the reason to take this very seriously. The good news, research shows that execs, C-levels in most organizations recognize the importance of taking this seriously. So perhaps hard to see these numbers, but a majority of C-levels anticipate moderate or even massive digital disruption in the next 12 months. So people are getting ready for this and making plans. Maybe the watch out is that when we did some research talking to HR professionals and asked them, do you think that C-levels are paying lip service to this topic, to digital and to digital disruption? The majority of people across most industries said yes, that was their fear, that although a company had a plan and talked a bit about it, they weren't taking it sufficiently seriously. Here's an example of a CEO who is. It's Jeff Immelt from General Electric. And I think this is a fabulous quote. We want to treat analytics like it's as core to the company over the next 20 years as material science has been over the past 50 years. This is a company that's been around for over 100 years making stuff. And the CEO is saying, actually, we're going to put data at the heart of what we do going forwards. And that's as important or even more important to us than the stuff that we're best known for. The power of signaling, the power of setting that agenda around digital from the very top of the organization. And of course, and I'm guessing many of you in the room here are in the field of HR or learning and development. A lot of this is about how well we all as an organization understand this stuff. And it's, again, perhaps a bit hard to read, but this number here, 23% of people in our HR feel like they get the right amount of training in digital. Speaks volumes to me. Often HR or L&D departments are the ones who are asked to go fix this problem and figure out how teams can be upskilled in digital in businesses, but very often they're the ones who get their training last. So we talked about disruption and the need to get ready for it. I think the second big thing is that clearly there will be some specific skills that businesses will need to go get very quickly in light of a lot of the changes that are happening. And there's a lot of discussion about this right now in the context of Brexit and the future of our economy. There's a quote from Mark Carney here, a report from Accenture highlighting the number of, or if you like, the skills gap, 745,000 workers with digital skills needed this year. A topic I think you're all familiar with. What might some of those skills be? Well, based on what I've talked about, I think it's people, for example, who are experts in designing customer experiences, people who can help businesses operate differently, scrum masters and agility coaches. I'll come on to talk about this in a bit more detail in a second. Obviously, folks who get how to do digital marketing, and then people who can analyze and interpret data and translate that to the rest of the organization. Al Varian, chief economist at Google, says, I'm serious when I say that in 10 years, the sexiest job will be statisticians. And I guess we'll laugh a bit at that, but I think that speaks volumes. So I think it's really key that you think about the kind of specific skills gaps you have in your organization in the light of a lot of these trends, and ask yourself, are we doing enough to fill those gaps? Beyond that, of course, a lot of this is about how companies operate and work and the culture of those companies. I see a few smiles around the audience. This is a well-known challenge, the Marshmallow challenge. Probably a bunch of you have done this. We certainly do a lot in our trainings. The idea very quickly is that you give groups of people 18 minutes to construct a tower as high as possible to get the marshmallow that you're given to the highest possible point. So that's string, it's tape, it's spaghetti. This has been done, I've got some competition. This is being done the world over with all sorts of different groups. And to kind of cut to the chase, one of the most effective groups at doing this are kids, kindergarten students. And one of the least effective students at doing this are recently graduated business school students. And the reason for that is that business school students get in a huddle, they put their heads together, they come up with possibly a very sensible plan, and then they spend 17 or 16 or however many minutes executing it brilliantly, and they do this. And of course kids, we all know how kids are, they just try stuff. They give something a go for a couple of minutes, it doesn't work, they do something different. So it's effectively iterating to get to better results. Can you still, okay. Then the other big learning from here, again, it's been done the world over, is that diverse skill sets deliver better results. So I guess the big call out here, the bar on the end, is a group of CEOs and exec admins. It's this group of specialized and facilitation skills bringing different skill sets together that tends to bring the best results. You may have heard of Agile working or sprint working. This is also at the core of what makes a lot of digital companies today very successful. So Agile working, the very best businesses at this are constantly iterating and building new prototypes based on great customer insights. So this literally describes a working week's worth of work, day one. Get a small group of smart people together to understand a problem based on as many insights as you can glean. That's where the data comes in. Split that group up. Get into kind of an expansive mode of thinking, brainstorm a bunch of possible solutions, get together day through, decide what those might be, build a very scrappy prototype, a minimum viable product, get that out there and validate whether it works, get some new data and start again. So this kind of working is increasingly, I think, the way businesses will need to work in order to be able to operate at the kind of pace that all of the broad digital trends are demanding. And then the last point that I wanted to make is one around culture. Is your business culture? And the quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." I'm not sure anyone knows exactly where that came from. I had the pleasure of working at Google for 9 years. This is one of Google's offices in Zurich. I think I sat in various of those old ski lifts. They're not anywhere near as comfy as they might look, actually. And Google, obviously, is a business that spends a lot of time and energy thinking about its culture, and I took a few things away from that I think might be helpful. The first of those is things like your office environment, and of course I get that not all businesses, especially the one that I now work for, are lucky enough to have the kind of space and resources to be able to create these beautiful environments, but actually just finding some spaces which are places people can go to brainstorm, to be more creative, to be more expansive, to huddle together, to work on sprint-type projects is really important. Lego, I think, are famous for having, for color coding their meeting rooms. They have, I forget the colors, but they have meeting rooms that are for expansive thinking, for brainstorming where... So Lego, one color room for expansive brainstorming, every idea is a good idea. Another color room where they take people out of those brainstorms, and that's where they make decisions about the ideas that they're going to pursue. It's a more kind of reductive mindset. That's one thing. Another Google cultural thing, good ideas come from anywhere. So there's the culture of 20% work, where people are actively encouraged to pursue projects that they're interested in, many of which turn out to be big products like Gmail. My team did things like Dragon's Den style competitions or X Prizes, where you set people challenges and you invite everyone to pitch their ideas, and then you pick the best and you reward those with kind of budget and resource. Google's a very good culture for leadership signaling. So Larry Page is a real role model here. He talks about 10x thinking. One of the things he often says is if you're not doing at least a few things that are crazy, you're doing the wrong things. In other words, if all you do is make incremental improvements to everything you do, and you're living in an exponential world, sooner or later what you do will become obsolete. So it's just important things that get people thinking differently about how they operate, encouraging, as he calls it, a healthy disregard for the impossible, that kind of mindset. And then the last piece is that data really is all important at Google. So in theory, at least, data trumps the HIPAA in the room. You probably all heard of this, the highest paid person's opinion. And actually, it doesn't matter what your opinion might be or what you think. If you haven't got the data to back that up, then you lose the argument. So to sum up, it's inevitable that your business will be disrupted by technology. I needed a plan to respond to that. Leadership here is absolutely critical. A part of this is knowing the very specific digital skills your business might now need as a result of all this change. But I think every bit as important is to recognize that everything and everyone in your company needs to be digital. So there's a broader thing here around ways of working, the basic levels of digital skills that everyone in the company needs for your company to be successful. And then lastly, it's as much about your business culture and a way of working as it is about very specific skills, many of which will be, obsolete or need refreshing in 12 or 18 or 24 months' time. And so I thought I would suggest to you all, not knowing exactly, of course, the roles that you all are in, 3 questions to ask. The first is, does your exec team understand digital, and do they have a plan? Do they really get it? And for that matter, do other key people in the organization who are involved in this? Have you thought hard about the skills you need to be successful today, tomorrow in your organization? Have you mapped those out? Have you done a bit of an audit? And where do you stand on that? And then lastly, are you investing in effective training programs to upskill the people in your organization with the kinds of skills you think they need? Some research that we've done suggests that only about 19% of training investment is going into digital right now across UK companies. If you think about some of the trends that I talked about, I would argue certainly that sounds low to me. Most of that's concentrated in marketing departments, makes very good sense, but what about the rest of the organisation? And I think the other big question, the key here, is around effective training programs. How well do you understand the return you're getting on those investments? And what kind of levels of engagement are you getting in that training? So lastly, before we get to Q&A, just a quick bit about the company I work for. We absolutely do work with lots of companies on these sorts of challenges. We hear lots of companies tell us, often the execs themselves, that they're a bit embarrassed they don't fully understand digital and would love us to help them get it more. and we have a digital framework that helps us think about that stuff. Plenty of people call out marketing as an area where more investment is needed to get up to speed with the latest digital marketing technologies. And then, yes, a lot of it is about ways of working. How can we as a company be more agile, be faster to respond to some of these trends that we're seeing? And again, we work with them on that stuff. We have a bunch of programs to help folks at very senior levels, board level, all the way down to very scaled programs that can be rolled out to thousands of employees in your organization on things like the basics of digital marketing. We also have a capability audit, so we can help you map the kind of skills you have and benchmark that against other organizations. And lastly, for us, it is absolutely about learning that works. So we know that great learning has to be engaging. Students have to enjoy the learning and stick with it. It has to be about meaningful outcomes. It's great having a fabulous learning experience, but if you don't apply that in your job and it doesn't actually have measurable impact, then I guess what's the point in doing it? And it has to scale. If you're working particularly for large organizations across potentially tens or hundreds of thousands of employees. And we feel we have a kind of tried and tested way built up over many, many years of doing this stuff, of delivering learning that works.